Hey everyone, this is Dylan, and today I'm going to be doing my top 15 movies of 2023. So, I am coming back after a long break from making videos. I had a lot of life things happen between the last time I posted and now, and I'd really like to start getting back into making videos and doing reviews and all that kind of stuff, and hopefully I will be able to continue on. Things might be a little rocky here and there, but I'm really hoping to get back on track and start posting videos at least somewhat more frequent and not like 10 months ago or whatever. So I wanted to come back with my so far yearly tradition. I think I started in 2020 maybe doing a top 10 list for the year, but this year I had, I think, like 16 or 17 movies that I rated between a 4 and a 5. And so I was like, I can cut a couple of those out and I'll do a top 15 instead of having to do a top 10, because I definitely wanted to talk about some of these things. And so I will do a disclaimer saying I did not watch every movie that came out this year. There were quite a few movies that I missed, and that just happened. So let me know in the comments down below if there is a movie that did not make my list, because chances are maybe I didn't watch it and I'd really like to know so then I can watch it for the future, and it potentially could make my top 10 discoveries of 2024. All right, so let's start with my number 15 movie of 2023, and that is Infinity Pool. Now, this is a movie that was done by Brandon Cronenberg. I believe it's his second feature film, and it stars Alexander Skarsgård and Mia Goth. The movie revolves around a couple on vacation in a fictional Eastern European country. This country kind of has a twisted justice system where if you're rich enough, you can pay to have a essential clone of yourself made in order to take on the punishment of the crimes that you do in this country. This is a big revenue driver for this country, and a bunch of rich people kind of do it, and it's like a recreation thing. It's not perfect by any means, but there is some real interesting elements that are brought into this about ethicalness and kind of like a sense of self, because you're creating this double who then has all the memories that you have. There's a lot of interesting questions that this movie brings up. It also has some of the signature Cronenberg body horror and really interesting visual elements to this movie, and so that's definitely why I wanted to include it on this list. At number 14, we have Cobweb. This was a movie that I just recently watched December 31st. It was definitely one that I wanted to make sure that I watched before the year was over, because I thought that it potentially might be on my list from some of the things that I've been hearing from other people, hearing other top 10 lists, and all of that. And so this movie revolves around a child who has some pretty intense and overprotective parents who are played by Lizzie Kaplan and Anthony Starr. And as this movie continues on, the little boy starts hearing voices coming from inside his walls, and his parents say, "No, you're fine. Nothing's there." And then he starts acting out because the voice inside of his wall is telling him to do things. And then he starts to question things. And it's a very interesting story. I really liked the first 2/3 of this movie. And then I didn't not like the last third, but it really kind of declines in a way that I did not anticipate. And that's why it's lower on this list. I definitely think this movie deserves to be on this list because of those first 2 acts. Coming in at number 13, we have Saw X. Now, I am a fan of the Saw movies, and of course, this one was really exciting that it was coming out due to the Saw franchise kind of being put on pause The last Saw movie we got was the prequel Jigsaw, and then we had the Spiral, but that was kind of not, it was like Saw, but not Saw. And so we got Saw 10 come in, and this is a movie that I've seen people say that it takes place between the first movie and the second movie. We have a Saw movie where John Kramer is diagnosed with his cancer and is told that it's terminal. He meets somebody who tells him that there's these people and there's this like kind of miracle surgery that they can do and continue on. And it helps to this guy. And so he decides to contact these people. He has to go to Mexico in order to do it. He has the surgery done and then realizes that things aren't quite right. And I think that the Saw franchise doesn't get enough credit for these kind of ethical issues that it brings up, which in this movie particularly, it's like medical malpractice slash scammers slash the entire franchise is really about justice, like the ethical nature of justice and vigilante justice and how far you can take it. And I think that the Saw franchise has that really strong social commentary, and this movie was no different. And I do think that some of the traps here aren't as elaborate as some of the traps in the later entries of this franchise, but I think that also makes sense because there was a lot of criticism of Jigsaw when that came out, that he had all these like elaborate traps, and this was supposed to have taken place before the events of the first movie where they were literally just in a bathroom. I think that that's toned down so it makes sense in the timeline. And overall, I thought it was really good. I really am excited to see where Saw 11 goes. And I'm really hoping we can get a couple more Saw movies out before anything happens to Tobin Bell. He is quite old. I believe I just saw something that said he was like 80 years old and he's still doing Saw movies. So that's incredible. And I hope that we can continue on with him for at least a couple more movies before the character of John Kramer is kaput. Coming in at number 12, we have Five Nights at Freddy's. This movie was something that I was not really expecting to be great. I had heard, obviously, of Five Nights at Freddy's. It's an incredibly popular game online, but I didn't really know any of the lore. I know that there's a ton of lore, but I didn't really know any of that other than that there's these animatronics that basically are haunted, essentially. And that really piqued my interest. I was like, I'll definitely give this movie a watch. It was a day and date release on Peacock, and so I was like, I don't have to spend any extra money to go to the theaters. Let's watch this movie and see how it is. And I was really pleasantly surprised. It was definitely PG-13. It's a really dark movie for what I was thinking was more of a like children's horror game, and I was like, oh wow, I was surprised at how dark it was, and I see so much potential with this franchise. So I really can't wait to see where they take this franchise in the future, because they are definitely making more of these movies, considering that the movie made so much money and is like one of the most successful movies that Blumhouse has ever made. They're not gonna just let this IP go. So I definitely look forward to seeing what they have in store for the future. Coming in at number 11 is another movie I just watched December 31st. It was Renfield. This was a movie that I definitely wanted to see. Even when it came out on Peacock, I, for some reason, couldn't get myself to click it to watch it. There was always something else that I wanted to watch, or I just didn't have the time, and then I just kind of forgot about it. And it was definitely something that I had wanted to watch. And so I finally got around to watching it, and I actually really enjoyed it. I mean, it is number 11 on my list. And so this is a movie where they take the Dracula story and they kind of turn it into this action horror comedy and set it in the present day, which I don't think that there is enough present day Dracula stories. Every time we get a story with Dracula in it, like the actual character of Dracula. It is in the 1900s, 1800s, all of that. The only other one that I can think of that's like a modern day Dracula story is Dracula 2000, which I did also like. And so I really liked bringing Dracula into the modern world. I think Nicolas Cage was kind of great as Dracula, and Nicholas Hoult, I think, was great as Renfield. I liked the actiony elements of this, where Nicholas Hoult playing Renfield would eat bugs and it would give him powers, which I don't know if that is part of like the Dracula lore or not. I probably should figure that out, but I thought that it was interesting. Nicolas Cage's Dracula, where he is like burned by the sun and then he has to take all of these like years or months to recuperate being by eating people and all of that. And I think that that's really interesting and really liked this movie. Coming in at number 10, we have Megan. Megan was another kind of sleeper hit that kind of took the internet by storm when the first trailer came out. And I think that it's an entertaining movie. Is it like an absolute great movie? No, but I do want to see that Megan versus Chucky, which they're both Universal titles, I do believe. And so it's possible that they could do it. And Universal, in their marketing campaign, Chucky and Megan were going at it online. And I think it would be incredible to see a Chucky versus Megan. I think we should get our Megan 2.0 and then get Don Mancini in there and get a Megan versus Chucky. I think that that is great. I do wish the movie was a bit more R-rated. Coming in at number 9, we have Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. This movie, what it does for animation was incredible. This movie was so beautiful to look at. And the animation style is so interesting. I really think that this makes animation more exciting. It's also telling more adult stories. While this is more of a family-friendly movie, it is telling a more adult story, and I do really enjoy that. And also just Spider-Man. So this whole, like, Miles Morales is like the main Spider-Man in the story, but you have all these other Spider-Man and Spider people, and it just makes everything really interesting. And Spider-Man's always been a very popular character. I've always really liked the Spider-Man movies, and so I'm really happy to have had this movie. And unfortunately, we're gonna have to wait a while to see the part 2 of this movie. I think it was like 2025 or 2026 was when they were saying that they was gonna come out, and that's insane, but I can't wait for it. Coming in at number 8, we have a extremely random movie, but I did want to include it on this list because I did really enjoy it, and it hits a lot of the sweet spots for me. This is called My Norwegian Holiday. And this, I believe, is a Hallmark movie, a Hallmark Christmas movie, which I don't watch many of, but I was scrolling on Peacock and I was like, what is this movie? My Norwegian Holiday? And if you don't know anything about me, I do love some Norway. It's a little obsession I have. I just really like the country of Norway. And if you take like I did a DNA test, and like roughly 25% of my DNA is from Scandinavia, with the majority of that being Norway. So I have a vested interest in Norway. So when I saw that this Hallmark movie came out, that they went to Norway, I was like, you know what? Let's watch this. And it was really short. It was probably only an hour and 16 minutes. So I was like, yeah, let's give this a shot. And in addition to like being set in Norway and just kind of like loving that kind of thing, it was just actually really heartfelt, and it was like super feel good. The male lead in this movie was like a injured Olympic skier, which also hits another sweet spot of mine of the Olympics. And so this just kind of was this conglomeration of many different things that I love, and I was like, you know what? It's gotta go on my list because I did enjoy it so much. Coming in at number 7, we have May December. This is a movie that came out at the beginning of December, and this is a true crime story, kind of. And that is one of the sweet spots of mine, is true crime. And so May December is a take on the Mary Kay Letourneau story, who I believe she was a teacher at the time, who had inappropriate relations with a student of hers who was 13. And so they take that story, they alter it a little bit for this movie, but for the most part, this is that story. So we see that story fast forwarded like 20 years. So the male character is in his 30s, and I think that the wife character is in her 50s or 60s. And so we kind of see that dynamic. To bring those feelings even more, Natalie Portman is playing a character who is an actress in the movie, and she is playing a version of Julianne Moore's character, the Mary Kay Letourneau character. And by Natalie Portman being there, it adds all of these questions. All these questions start to pop up around their life, and if the victim of that woman, the husband, if he really feels the way that he thinks that he feels. And Charles Melton, who is playing the husband, is from Riverdale. That's where I know him from. And he just does such a good job. And I never would have guessed that he would have been so good. And potentially an Oscar winner, because he's got a real big Oscar buzz for this movie. But I definitely think that this movie is incredible and goes places that I never thought that it would. And ultimately is just a really good movie. Coming in at number 6, we have Talk to Me. So Talk to Me was a movie that I was able to see at an advanced screening as part of like the AAA 24 membership that I have, that I pay like monthly for, and I got tickets to an advanced screening. So one of my friends and I were able to go to an advanced screening in St. Louis, where it's close to where I'm from. And usually they don't do advanced screenings in St. Louis, so that's why I was really excited for it. So we went, and it was an incredible horror movie from first-time directors. The story was so interesting, and the visual of the hand and the visual of them being taken over by the spirits was insanely good. It wasn't as scary as I had hoped, but I thought that this was a really good movie, and my friend also really enjoyed it as well. Coming in at number 5 was Scream 6. So I went and saw this in theaters. I don't really go to the theaters too often, but I had a friend who I was like, hey, you want to go to the movies and see Scream 6? Because the first Scream 5, came out during the pandemic. I went to see that in the middle of the pandemic, opening night, wore a mask the whole time, and now that things have kind of settled down a little bit, I was excited to go to the movies to see Scream 6 with friends because I was still living in my hometown at that time, and everyone else had been in like St. Louis. This takes the core 4 of the survivors from Scream 6 and Gale Weathers, and takes them to New York City, where we have Ghostface basically taking over New York City and murdering people all around this family. I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it with the whole behind the scenes stuff that happened with Nev Campbell, and then they were like, we're not going to pay Nev Campbell, so she's not going to be in the movie, but we have Hayden Panettiere coming back, and that was exciting. So I really did enjoy that. And I just thought that this movie was significantly better than Scream 6. I had so many issues with Scream 6, and this was like one that I left the theater like, I actually really enjoyed this one, and I was really excited. And I am glad that this movie worked out and that I was happy with it, because I don't know what's happening with Scream 7, but it seems like we may not get a Scream 7 for a while. And that's really disappointing. And so, I don't know, I guess we'll see what happens, but I'm glad that this one at least made my list. Coming in at number 4, we have the movie Red, White, and Royal Blue. Now, this is a like romantic comedy that is based off of a book about the son of the President of the United States and the grandchild or the grandson of the British monarchy falling in love. It's like an enemies to lovers type of movie. I really liked this. I had read the book during one of my, I had listened to the book during one of my commutes to work back when they had first announced that this movie was going to be made, and I was like, let's listen to this. A lot of people were talking about it at the time, and I ended up really liking it. And I thought that this movie was just this like feel-good movie, and it captured the book pretty well from what I recollect from listening to it, and overall just really liked it. Coming in at number 3, we have Barbie. This movie, I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about this movie when I watched it, because it's clearly a specific demographic that would be interested in this movie, if that makes sense. And so I don't fit the main demographic for it. So I was like, let's give this a shot and see what it is about. So I love the comedy in this movie. I think that is really great. I do love a highly stylized movie, and Barbie, if anything, is highly stylized. The way that they were able to get Barbie Land to look like an actual toy set was incredible. It's like one of those things where they have it in the commercial, and at the little bottom of the commercial it says not actual toy play or whatever. And I just really liked that aspect of it. And the America Ferrera character, she has this incredible monologue towards the end of the movie where she just breaks down how hard it is to be a woman today, and how much Barbie meant to her, and how much Barbie means to so many women across the world. And I just really liked that movie. I liked the messages that it had. I liked the style of the movie. Apparently Mattel is wanting to cash in on its IP, and there's all kinds of movies coming out based on Mattel IP. So I'm definitely excited that we're going to be getting much more. And they haven't announced anything, but we're gonna get more Barbie. It's just a matter of when, not if. Coming in at number 2, we have Evil Dead Rise. This movie was kind of a sleeper pick. I was not sure how I was going to like it. I've just been kind of like medium on the Evil Dead movies. The first 2, I think, are okay. I think they're probably about 3.5 stars out of 5 for me. I did not like Army of the Dead. I need to rewatch it, but the first time I watched it, I was not a fan of it. And I did like the Evil Dead remake that came out in, I believe, 2013. So I wasn't sure how I was going to like this. This was more in line with that remake where we don't have Bruce Campbell coming back, and it's more of like a reboot to the story. And this movie takes the story of Evil Dead and transplants it into a apartment building. And I think that was genius. And Alyssa Sutherland, incredible actress in this movie. I think that she stole the show, and I think overall this movie was just exactly what we needed at this time. And it was insane that this was going to be a HBO Max original movie, and they watched it and they were like, this is too good to go on HBO Max alone. Let's put it in theaters first. And this is definitely a theater quality movie, and overall really good. And now coming in at number 1 is maybe an interesting choice, but it is Saltburn. And I mean, clearly the biggest thing in this movie was the bathtub scene that was all over social media, and how insane that one was, or the ending dance to Murder on the Dance Floor. And those were the only things I knew. I didn't really know much about this movie, but after watching it, I liked it so much. There's elements of the television show You in this movie where there's an obsession that leads to somebody doing things that they might not ordinarily want to be doing, or might not ordinarily do. And it was just so good, and there were these elements of shock, which I would say a lot of people blew up what actually happened. Like, it wasn't like that shocking. I've seen much more shocking things in horror movies, but it was something that was like, oh wow, I have not seen this in a actual semi-mainstream movie before, and I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that kind of, like, you didn't know where this movie was going, because it was stuff that we hadn't really seen in a mainstream movie before, and so I really enjoyed it. So that is my list of my top 15 movies of 2023. And leave me a comment down below letting me know what your top movies of the 2023 were, and maybe there'll be some new movies that I can watch for 2024. And remember, if you're not already subscribed and you'd like to be, please hit that subscribe button down below and give this video a like if you liked it. Thank you guys for watching, and have a great day. Bye.